Schools shot up, people's houses being riddled with bullets, businesses being destroyed. This is the life of many residents of Culiacan, Sinaloa. People in Culiacan are too scared to leave their house because they fear they might be killed by the cartels. A lot of people are referring to this as a narco pandemic. There's a cartel civil war going on, and it's hurting innocent civilians more than anybody. Sinaloa residents are even struggling to make ends meet, as no one is able to go outside to work because of the danger. Residents are now receiving food packages from the government because the state is in lockdown. Sinaloa is a state in Mexico which is known as a cartel state. It's always been a dangerous place for civilians, police officers, and tourists because of the cartel activity that goes on in Sinaloa. However, it's more dangerous than ever. This is because of a civil war going on within a cartel, the Sinaloa cartel. A brief history of the Sinaloa cartel. It's been said that Chinese migrants were the first ones to bring opium into Sinaloa in the late 1900s, which jump-started people to get involved in selling it. There were a lot of peasants working on farms for a living, and they saw the potential in selling heroin poppy. When the United States banned heroin, many farmers in Sinaloa saw a black market they could cash in on by harvesting heroin and sending it into the United States. Eventually, after many people realizing the money they could make from this operation, they started making all sorts of drugs, mainly marijuana and cocaine. They really focused on cocaine, as in the 80s, cocaine was exploding in the USA and everyone was doing it. And so the Mexicans saw this as a gold rush they could take advantage of. The Sinaloa cartel was founded in 1960s by a man named Pedro Aviles Perez. Its main focus was growing marijuana and smuggling it into the United States. Pedro was known for laying down the groundwork for such operations and utilizing aircrafts to carry out operations. Pedro was the first one to step up and start moving large quantities of marijuana into the United States. Eventually, Pedro met one of his son's friends who was interested in what he was doing. His son's friend was named Joaquin Guzman Lopez, also known as El Chapo. Yes, the one and only El Chapo. Unfortunately, Pedro was gunned down in a shootout with police. This was El Chapo's big moment to make something huge of himself. El Chapo started diversifying his operations. He would help the Colombians move coke into the USA because there was such a huge demand for it. He also started expanding his operations into other states in Mexico. One state was Jalisco, where he worked alongside Miguel Angel Felix Garrado, known as El Patrino, which translates to the Godfather. Another man named Rafael Caro Quintero, another man named Ernesto Fonseca Carrillo, and two brothers named the Ariela brothers. With all these men, El Patrino was more or less the shot caller and called this the Guadalajara cartel, with other divisions under it, including the Sinaloa cartel. The men got to work with the Colombians' Medellin cartel. They would move the coke by plane or boat into Mexico, then just simply cross into the USA on foot. This was all working very smoothly for everyone, but one day in 1985, an undercover agent from the U.S. Drug Enforcement Administration, also known as the DEA, was killed by one of the traffickers. Well, the United States was super pissed off at one of their men being taken out. The USA put pressure on Mexico to deal with these traffickers, and the cartels had to act fast. A lot of the leaders left Mexico completely to hide. However, El Chapo remained in Sinaloa. Eventually, Miguel, who was the godfather, was arrested and began to operate the cartel from jail. He divided up territory to the men. El Chapo and his partner, Güero Palma, got Sinaloa and Baja California. Rafael Aguilar Guajardo moved to Hueras to create the Hueras cartel, and the Arellano brothers moved to Tijuana, where they made the Tijuana cartel, which was still under the Guadalajara cartel. It was a division. The Arellano brothers took it upon themselves to really get comfortable in Tijuana and in a way kind of make it their own cartel. Eventually, El Chapo formed an alliance with traffickers in Michoacan and formed a cartel known as the Millennial Cartel. This allowed the Sinaloa cartel to access many key ports to receive chemicals from China to make synthetic drugs like meth. This also helped expand the Sinaloa cartel's operations. Even though everyone was at an alliance, things were about to get very turbulent. You see, those Arellano brothers that were in Tijuana, one of the brothers was named Ramon, and he had a hunger for violence. At one point, El Chapo sent one of his most trusted men to go negotiate with the brothers. Before the associate could even say hi, Ramon shot him in the face. This really rattled El Chapo, and he sent gunmen to shoot up a Tijuana cartel party that was located in Jalisco. El Chapo's men went into the party dressed as police officers and started unloading clips on everybody. The brothers, however, were in the washroom, probably doing nose beers, and they escaped through the AC duct. The Tijuana cartel responded by calling a hit on El Chapo. However, this hit was insanely unsuccessful. They ended up accidentally killing a Mexican Catholic carnal instead. And if you know anything about Mexico, they take religion very serious down there, so this really pissed off Mexico. After all this, El Chapo flew to Guatemala to hide, but he was arrested 2 weeks later. From behind bars, El Chapo was still the shot caller. He appointed a group of brothers to run things outside. Arturo Guzman Lore, Hector Alfredo, and Arturo Beltran Leyva. They went by the name BLO, which translates to Beltran Leyva Organization. They were lifelong Sinaloa residents who used to harvest heroin poppy alongside El Chapo, so he trusted them to with the cartel. Things were smooth at first, but one of the brothers, Alfredo, was arrested, and the brothers suspected El Chapo turned him in to the authorities. In return, the BLO successfully assassinated one of El Chapo's sons, Edgar Guzman Joaquin. This led to an all-out war in Sinaloa, with the Sinaloa cartel and the BLO. For the most part, El Chapo slapped around the BLO and established themselves as the more dominant cartel. El Chapo was seen as a very strong figure in the Sinaloa cartel, alongside El Mayo and El Azul, who were leading the Juarez cartel. In 2010, the police killed a man who went by Nacho, who was the link between the Sinaloa cartel and the Millennial cartel. This started a bit of turbulence between the cartels, and they no longer worked together. Eventually, when El Chapo was arrested for the third and last time in 2017, the cartel was left to El Mayo. However, things started to get fragmented, as El Chapo's sons were working for the cartel and established their dominance, as they were very violent and analytical just like their father. This started to split up the Sinaloa cartel into 4 factions. The 4 factions within the cartel were not seeing eye to eye because they used to operate in the same state. But now they're in the same state, but they're in the middle of a civil war. The first faction is Los Chapitos, led by 4 sons of El Chapo: Joaquin Guzman Lopez, Ivan Archivaldo Guzman Salazar, Ovidio Guzman Lopez, and Jesus Alfredo Guzman Salazar. Another faction is ran by El Mayo. Another faction is ran by Aureliano Guzman Larrea, who's El Chapo's blood brother. And another faction is ran by a man named Rafael Caro Quintero. For the most part, the last 3 factions are closer, and they go by La Maiza, while El Chapo's son goes by Los Chapitos, which translates to Little Chapos. La Maiza and Los Chapitos were already a bit skeptical of each other, but what happened next started a war. On July 25th, 2024, El Mayo was going to a meeting with Joaquin Guzman Lopez, one of the Los Chapitos, to discuss real estate alongside the governor of Sinaloa. Before the meeting, however, 6 men in military uniforms kidnapped El Mayo and threw him in the back of a truck and brought him to a private jet. After that jet flew to El Paso, Texas, and both El Mayo and Joaquin were arrested. It's been said that Joaquin struck a deal to turn himself in, and for leniency dragged El Mayo down with him. Obviously, in the word of cartel, snitching is the biggest sin, so this sparked an all-out civil war in Sinaloa and turned the 2 factions against each other. El Mayo's son, who goes by Mayito Flaco, was super pissed off and started a war against the Los Chapitos. What made things even worse was El Chapo's blood brother sided with El Mayo, which made the 4 factions only 2 factions. So it was basically everybody against Los Chapitos. Los Chapitos and La Maiza are also taunting each other in creative ways. One nickname for La Maiza is Los Sombreros. So many dead bodies on the street are being found with a sombrero on top of the body. It's unclear if this is La Maiza leaving their mark, or if it's Los Chapitos taunting the other side, but it's still very twisted. Another taunt is the Los Chapitos are sometimes referred to as La Chapiza. Therefore, dead bodies are being found on the street with a box of pizza nailed into it. Oftentimes it's Little Caesars. Some folks in Sinaloa are siding with La Maiza, as La Maiza is seen as an old school narcos with ethics and principles, while Los Chapitos is seen as more posh and more reckless. If La Maiza and Los Chapitos weren't fighting each other, they're fighting with the police. However, the police are very limited in what they could do because they don't want to hurt civilians in the crossfire. And oftentimes these cartels hide where civilians are, or they use human shields, so it makes it hard for the police to do anything. It got to a point where the police just admitted they have no control over what's going on, and Sinaloa is going to have to wait for the cartels to find a solution and stop fighting. To this day, Culiacan is in the narco pandemic, and the death toll is raising by the day. Hopefully the current government can find a solution for all this. Thanks for watching. Have a nice day.